Okay, so you'll notice that I'm not recording a video with my picture in the side here. That's because it's Sunday morning, I'm extremely tired, I look like crap, so I'm just going to go with my voice. So here's my disembodied voice to go over this stuff. Should not be a very long video. These are polyatomic ions which you should have already memorized. However, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make all the different derivatives, all the different variations to these polyatomic ions. One of the most important things though is that you have to have a polyatomic ion that has, one, it has to have an oxygen, and two, it has to have at least 3 oxygens. So, there are no variations to hydroxide. There are no variations to acetate. There are no variations to ammonium because one, ammonium does not even have oxygen. Hydroxide and acetate have 1 or 2 oxygens to start with. You have to have at least 3 starting oxygens to have the variations. So what are these variations? Well, let's pretend you add an oxygen to something. So let's just pretend I start with sulfate. Sulfate is SO4. SO4 and has a -2 charge. However, let's just add an oxygen to that and make it SO5. Whenever you add an oxygen, it becomes per. You want to add the prefix per to the end. So it becomes persulfate. Persulfate. Notice the charge stays exactly the same. So persulfate is SO5. It has a -2 charge. So again, you take whatever your starting polyatomic ion is, you add 1 oxygen to it, and you just say per in front. That's the only thing that changes. You add per to the name, and you add 1 oxygen. Now, let's take away 1 oxygen. So if we take away an oxygen, let me raise this up actually, there we go. So if I take away an oxygen, now it's SO3. SO3. So whenever you take away an oxygen, you're going to change the ending to ite. So it's no longer sulfate, it's sulfite. It's still -2 charge. Again, the charge will never, ever, ever change. So again, you take an oxygen away, you change the ending to ite. You add an oxygen, it's still 8, it's just per whatever it is, 8. Okay? Let's take 2 oxygens away, which is the most you can do. It becomes hypo. You add the prefix hypo in front, and then keep the sulf, and then ite. So it's hyposulfite. So again, notice all 4 of these, you have the exact same charge. The only difference is you're changing the oxygens. So you take your starting one, add an oxygen, per in front of it. Take away 1 oxygen, change the ending to ite. Take away 2 oxygens, add the prefix hypo, and then keep the ending ite. So again, if you ever see an ite, ite, that meant you took oxygens away. If you see a per, it means you added an oxygen. If you see the hypo, it meant hypoite, you took 2 oxygens away. So let's just make one up real quick. I probably got to open up Word or something. What can I do? Let's just do it on Word. We'll zoom in to make it so it's really big. Let's just say I'll make one up real quick. How about carbon? Let's do hypocarbonite. Hypocarbonite. What's the formula? Well, here's what you need to look at. 1, it says hypo. Hypoite means you need to take away 2 oxygens. But what was the original polyatomic ion? The original polyatomic ion was CO3, let me do this, CO3 with a -2 charge. However, since it's hypoite, hypocarbonite, I need to take 2 oxygens away. So instead of 3 oxygens, it will only be 1 oxygen. So it'll be CO with a -2 charge. Remember, we never, ever, ever write a 1. Never write a 1. It's assumed to be 1 if there's no number. So there you go. If I wanted to make it per carbon, first of all it has to be 8, percarbonate, that means I needed to add an oxygen. So if I added an oxygen to the original one, it would be CO4. That's it. That's all you got to do. It's really simple. So again, just memorize this chart. If you add an oxygen, you put per in front. If you add an oxygen, you put per in front. If you take away an oxygen, I hate when that thing pops up. You take away an oxygen, you put ite at the end. You put ite at the end. You take away two oxygens, you put hypo in front and then ite at the end. So it's a hypo something ite. Take away one, it's a something ite. You have your starting one. If you add something, it's a per something ate. And that's it. Easy.